In 1830, this coastline is not a town, just heath, wind, and a thin stream slipping into the sea. But a few decisions will change everything. A single house built on empty land, an estate owner willing to sell and shape the shoreline, and a new Victorian belief that air itself can heal. This is the story of a place that wasn't born from industry or conquest, but from a carefully engineered idea, a town designed to breathe. They don't come here for music halls or bright promenades. Not yet. They come because city life is tightening. Smoke, crowding, noise, sleeplessness. And when a doctor says, "Go south, walk slowly, breathe salt and pine," people listen. Bournemouth's early years are quieter than most histories, but the stakes are real. If the town grows too fast, it destroys the calm it sells. Before the name Bournemouth meant anything, this coast was mostly open heath between Christchurch and Poole, windy, sandy, and easy to overlook. The settlement's origin is tied to a clear starting point. In 1810, retired Army officer Lewis Tregonwell bought land at the mouth of the Bourne Stream and began building a house. By 1812, he and his wife had moved in. That first home gave the area a permanent human center, and it's why Tregonwell is remembered as the founder. This founding moment was possible because of an earlier shift in ownership. The Christchurch Enclosures Act of 1802 and the award of 1805 moved large stretches of common heath into private hands. What had been open land for grazing became property that could be planted, leased, and developed. In other words, the landscape could now be engineered. The other major name in this beginning is George Iveson Taps, lord of local manors and a key landowner in the area that would become Bournemouth. After the enclosures, he held large acreage, opened a public house on the heath in 1809, and sold Tregonwell about 8.5 acres in 1810. If Tregonwell is the first builder, Taps is the land power that made planned development possible. In 1809, before there was a town, there was an inn, the Taps Arms. It was practical, a landmark for travelers crossing the heath, yet it hints at the future. Inns appear where journeys repeat. They become nodes, and nodes become towns. Around 1800, the only regular visitors were practical ones, fishermen along the shore, turf cutters on the heath, and, according to local tradition, occasional smugglers using the empty coastline. They weren't building a town, they were using a landscape. Bournemouth begins as a working emptiness, not a community. The Bourne itself is small, but it matters. Fresh water supports settlement, and the stream mouth creates a natural crossing. When people begin to arrive, builders, workers, visitors, this becomes one of the first places they share without meaning to. In early Bournemouth, geography is the town plan. Now comes the detail that defines Bournemouth's character for decades: pine trees. Early planting helped shelter routes down toward the sea. Later, one such sheltered route was remembered as the Invalid's Walk, a name that tells you exactly who the town was being shaped for: people seeking health, gentle movement, and clean air. By 1830, Bournemouth still isn't a proper town. It's a small settlement with scattered houses and cottages among heath and pine. But the pattern is visible already. This is a place being developed for convalescence and quiet, not for industry and trade. In these decades, the name is often written as Bournemouth, describing the stream's mouth rather than a town. That wording captures the feeling of the place. Geography first, settlement second. Only as villas multiply and visitors repeat their seasons does the name tighten into a single word: Bournemouth, like the landscape finally agreeing to be a town. Reaching the coast is still slow. The coach road across the heath is exposed, and travel is measured in hours and weather, not miles. That difficulty filters who arrives. If you come here in the 1830s or 1840s, you have committed time, money, and patience. The ground is sandy and stubborn. Heather and coarse grasses spread across open heath, and the wind off the sea never fully stops. This is not easy farmland, and that difficulty kept it open longer than most places. Yet the same emptiness becomes valuable in the 19th century, because emptiness means space, space to breathe. Dorset. Across England, industrial growth accelerates. In many cities, the air is dirtier, the streets tighter, and life louder. For families with money, escape becomes part of staying well. Doctors increasingly recommend fresh air, walking, and sea bathing, especially for those with weak lungs or exhausted nerves. In this period, the sea is not entertainment first, it is therapy. Salt air, steady walking, and a change of rhythm are treated like remedies. The busiest coastal resorts already feel social and crowded. Bournemouth's advantage is that it is still inconvenient and quiet, an unpolished place that feels private. Sea bathing becomes fashionable, mixing health belief with social trend. The water is cold and the wind is sharp, but the act of bathing becomes a ritual, the body challenged, then revived. Bournemouth Shore, still quiet and uncrowded, offers the serious version of this ritual, less spectacle, more endurance. Early development included building sea villas for holiday letting. The model is simple. A visitor rents calm, not a thrill. They arrive for weeks, not weekends. And because they stay, the earliest economy forms around routine, food deliveries, firewood, laundry, repairs, and paths kept passable. Before Bournemouth is picturesque, it is practical. In a carpenter's shop, saws bite timber and fill the air with pale dust. Frames for windows and doors are measured, cut, and fitted. In a small smithy, metal is heated and shaped for hinges and fastenings. The resort that sells quiet is built by noisy work behind closed doors. Supplies arrive from nearby towns: timber, coal, lamp oil, tools, flour, salted meat. Carts creak along sandy tracks. Wheels sink slightly in soft ground. Horses breathe clouds into cold air. The logistics are slow and constant, and every delivery is a reminder. Even a town built on clean air still runs on material. Even a resort needs food, and food means cultivation. Small plots and kitchen gardens produce vegetables where soil allows, while other staples arrive by cart. The rhythm of planting and harvesting sits behind the rhythm of convalescence. One community recovering, another community working. Imagine arriving in winter. A carriage stops on a pale road. Wool wraps, tired eyes, a cough that won't leave. The door opens, and cold sea air rushes in. For a moment, nobody speaks. They can taste salt. This is what they came for. The doctor who sent them is careful with instructions. No excitement. No late nights. Walk among the pines. Breathe steadily. Sleep early. In the 1830s and 1840s, medicine cannot do everything, so environment becomes part of treatment. Bournemouth is prescribed like a place-based cure. At night, Bournemouth is a constellation of small rooms. Oil lamps glow behind curtains. Tea steams in cups. Someone reads until their eyes tire. A cough interrupts and then fades. Outside, the sea keeps speaking in the dark, steady and indifferent. There are no factories here, and that absence is not accidental. Bournemouth is valued as the opposite of industrial England. No chimneys, no soot, no mechanical pounding. The town sells silence, and silence sells well. In 1835, after his father's death, George William Tapsgervis inherited the estate and pushed development with more intention. The ambition becomes clearer: to shape Bournemouth into a resort that could stand beside established coastal names, while keeping the character of pine, air, and controlled calm. Over the following years, architect Benjamin Ferrei laid out a center as large villa plots along the lower Bourne Valley. The plan favored space and greenery, generous setbacks, big plots, and a sense that the landscape is part of the experience. Even the town-to-be is imagined as airy. When Tapsgervis died in 1842, the estate continued under trustees, and planning advice was sought from well-known figures such as Decimus Burton. It's another sign of ambition. Bournemouth is no longer improvising. It is borrowing professional ideas about how a resort should look and feel. Growth requires management, surveying, boundaries, leases, labor. This is the hidden machinery behind the resort. Measuring chains, paperwork, and rules about what must never be built because it would damage the town's identity. By 1840, the settlement is no longer only a retreat, it is becoming a community. Seasonal visitors return, and routines begin to shape local life. Villas gain names. Paths become predictable routes. Conversations repeat. Weather, health, calm, and the promise that next year will be better. Early visitors tend to be respectable and private. They prefer distance from crowds, and that preference shapes the town's unspoken code. Speak softly, dress properly, move slowly, do not draw attention. Bournemouth becomes exclusive not by law, but by atmosphere. In the 1840s, land near what would become Bournemouth Square is drained and laid out with shrubberies and walks. The landscape begins to look designed rather than merely planted. Routes for strolling, places to pause, gentle turns that hide the town from itself. In 1841, the story changes speed. Physician and writer Augustus Granville visits while researching health resorts, and Bournemouth is included in a new edition of the Spas of England. That sounds polite, but it's a signal flare. A place mentioned in the right book becomes real to the right class of visitor. After 1841, Bournemouth isn't merely developing, it is being validated. From that point, the town travels faster than its roads. Letters go out, try Bournemouth, the pine walks shelter you, the air feels different. Families compare lodgings and routes like trade secrets. But each recommendation carries danger. More visitors mean more buildings. More buildings mean less quiet. And Bournemouth's identity can be ruined by success as easily as saved by it. Every new villa weakens the isolation that attracted people in the first place. Grow too quickly and you become ordinary. Grow too slowly and you remain unknown. The tension is subtle but constant. Expansion always threatens the calm it depends on. For locals, the resort means steady work. Trunks carried, fences repaired, firewood delivered, paths cleared after storms, gardens weeded, laundry boiled. The town's gentle atmosphere is maintained by people whose hands are rough and whose days begin early. Their labor shapes every view. As the visitor community grows, a simple religious life follows. An earlier church building appears in the 1840s, later replaced by St. Peter's Church, and that alone signals change. Bournemouth is developing institutions, not just lodgings. It is turning from a seasonal refuge into a recognizable place. By mid-century, small signs of town life appear. Shops and services following the seasonal visitors. This is a threshold moment. A resort can remain scattered villas. A town needs a center, however small. Bournemouth is beginning to cross that line. Even by 1851, the settlement is still tiny in numbers, hundreds rather than thousands. That small scale is part of the atmosphere. You can still feel the heath close by, still hear the wind in pines more clearly than you hear human noise. Then the coast reminds everyone who truly owns the edge of this town. Wind bends the pines until branches groan. Sun lashes skin like grit. Waves hit the shore with blunt force. In the villas, lamps burn early and curtains stay drawn. Visitors listen to timbers creak and wonder, quietly, whether they made a mistake coming here at all. When morning comes, the air feels sharpened, almost rinsed. Paths are littered with blown sand. Workers clear debris. Deliveries resume. The sea calms as if nothing happened. And this is Bournemouth's truth. The cure is not comfort, it is endurance. The landscape offers calm only on its own terms. Not long after, indoors, away from the wind, Bournemouth faces a different storm: popularity. Paper lies flat on a table. A pen scratches. A plot is described in the language that sells best here: light, shelter, privacy, health. Outside, the heath still looks open. But in that room, the future tightens. The more desirable Bournemouth becomes, the more the town risks losing what made it desirable. Stakes appear in the ground. Rope lines pull straight. A new garden is outlined by nothing but intention. Each stake is quiet, but together they announce something irreversible. The landscape is no longer only nature. It is now a plan. And once the plan is visible, the town must choose: grow and manage itself carefully, or grow and become ordinary. The estate's answer is control: spacing between villas, tree planting, carefully maintained routes for walking, rules that discourage clutter. Bournemouth is being built like a private garden, beautiful because it is managed. That management is its earliest brand. By 1850, Bournemouth is undeniably becoming a town. Still small, still restrained, but no longer invisible. The seasonal rhythm is established, the reputation is growing, and the landscape has been reshaped to match a specific promise: health through air, walking, and controlled calm. Crucially, the railway has not yet arrived. Travel is still effortful. That effort acts like a gate, keeping arrivals limited and self-selecting. Bournemouth remains quiet partly because reaching it requires commitment. Bournemouth's early decades are not a story of conquest or industry. They are a story of design, designing air, movement, silence, and recovery. It is a rare thing, a town built around restraint. And that restraint becomes its power, preserved in pine groves and long paths even as the future approaches. If you could stand here in 1850 at dusk, you would feel it. The town is not loud, but it is becoming. The air smells of pine and salt. Lamplight glows behind curtains. The sea speaks steadily beyond the trees. Bournemouth is learning to be a place where people come not to chase life, but to recover it.